booster.
Did you? I've been debating on it.
Why?
I don't have time to walk. Do we have anything? Do you have one?
I have one.
Okay.
Are they required?
They aren't required.
I think that's what he was just asking.
Oh, is that what he asked?
Required.
Oh.
You're like, yeah.
I thought he
yeah.
asked if we had one.
I think
It's
he was asking if they were
suggested.
It's
required.
suggested, Joe.
Either.
See,
Izzy, what are you doing?
I got lost.
I think so.
I would say
I don't even know
so.
what's going on now.
Haven't seen you in 3 years.
More than that.
Have you guys heard anything about the fire district having any kind of meetings or anything? I've heard nothing either, so I was just wondering.
No news is good news.
I know too much. I'll plead the fifth.
I haven't heard.
I figured.
There's been
Dawn-
nothing in writing and no one reached out to me.
Well, I figured Dawn would reach out to me to do the agenda and the minutes and stuff like privately asked, but I was a little shocked you appointed the previous treasurer of the fire district before Dave Gallup's wife, but I couldn't unmute to have that discussion, so.
Well, I think to have 2 people so they can get things going and then they need to do something.
It's gotta be something.
And
Yeah, because Dawn said he was only gonna wait until January and then he was done.
so at least they have one person.
Yeah, they gotta at least have one meeting and ratify some stuff, otherwise.
Right. Do we want to start the recording and we'll have the people online start?
Yeah, give it a couple more minutes to see some people popping in.
Oh, you need some more chairs?
Yeah, correct.
So we got to speak here.
On the drive.
So that's still Martha. And then maybe Gallup will usually don't hold it. And if he's on our planning commission, which I never see, is he? He's going over to the dark side.
Yeah.
Why not? Own it, Martha. Usually do.
Here's the old place.
Well, they know, they have their own account.
Yeah.
No, that's for Dana Broker trying to get in.
How are you doing? There we go, okay. I'll start it. Go ahead. It's recording.
So we're gonna start out tonight by having the people online identify themselves, just state your name.
Just tell who.
Teresa, can you go first?
Yeah, my name is Teresa Gerard and I live in Newport.
Dave Barlow,
Dave Barlow, treasurer. Over.
Stephanie, how about you?
Hi, Stephanie Rondo. I'm the assistant to the planning commission, and I'm also taking minutes.
She was taking minutes.
Nope.
754, is it Dave
That's Dave.
Gallup, is that you?
Yep.
Okay.
Phil Marquette, select board.
Scott Breyer, select board.
Ned Connell, town administrator.
Busy. Now we'll move to the room.
Now to everybody else.
Just say your name and
Israel Sandville, planning commission. Martha Sylvester, resident. Henry Cole, Danville. Beth Carnes, Newport.
Jay Walsh, report. Joe Gay, solid waste systems.
Sam McLeod, Casella.
Pretty much, resident, we appointed the planning commission here.
Just a reminder for everyone, please sign the sign-in sheet, either on the way in, way out. Don't forget, because we don't want to miss you.
I'm going to call Monday, November 15th, meeting to order. Thank you all for attending. Changes or additions to the agenda?
We have one big change to the agenda. There will be no warrants because Deb was sick today and she's just getting over COVID of all things.
Okay.
And so she will do it via email. But she's getting better. Not wood that she'll be in-house on Thursday all day.
Good.
I'd also like to point out that on your agenda, your executive sessions can't be warned like that. They have to say anticipated, suggested. Or there's one other word you can use. Proposed per statute.
So we should change or modify number 9 and 10 to say proposed.
Yeah, just proposed or anticipated. I always use anticipated when I do an agenda.
Okay, so we're gonna make the changes to line item 9 and 10 to state anticipated executive session. Do I have any public comment? Seeing none. And move on to update discussion of leachate pretreatment permitting at the News Vermont landfill site. So.
Sure, why don't you come on up?
It's a little easier for the people on,
Yeah.
on the Zoom to hear.
If you sit right in front of me, that'd be best, because you end up not in front of the camera then.
Facing you?
I
Yeah,
know,
that works.
just
That's-
somewhere not on camera.
You're good.
Okay.
Camera.
Not in front of the screen, yeah. There you go. Yeah, all right.
We don't need to see the screen.
So Ned, you had sent a list of questions. I don't know if you want to start with that. It's not
I
necessarily,
think that's probably about the best place to start, yes.
okay. So the first question,
Actually, why don't we start by saying, you just
An
had,
overview.
we had a couple, you just finished, or the public comment section about permitting for leachate pretreatment up at the landfill site. This is just a sort of get together and talk about how's it going, that sort of thing.
okay,
This
so
is not a public hearing relating to the pretreatment.
We've had questions asked to us, some of those in front of you, and then also just in general,
sure. Well,
like
we're-
update on how things are going and.
How's the
I know you guys
expansion
are-
going? How's the liner? How's it going? I'm
Yeah.
sure it's been a battle.
Yeah, sure. Happy to give you an update on all that stuff.
All right, great.
So maybe we'll start with the non-leachate discharge permit questions, and then probably the bulk of the discussion will be around that. So one of the questions is, how's the expansion construction going? And is it progressing according to the timeline? I think the general answer to that is yes, it's going well. We're certainly a year behind schedule due to some of the permitting delays with the construction. But we're on the schedule that, you know, was basically mandated to us once we get the permit. So we're hoping to go into cell this week, probably later this week. It has been a challenge with the weather and so forth, and basically it was a 3-year construction project, so we've had to span 3 years. But the liner system's down, the containment system is down, the pumping system is ready. The electricians were there this afternoon making some of the last minute installs on pumps and so forth. So we're hoping to get the certification report into the agency and get approval later this week to start placing the first bags of trash in the new cell.
And the first, I assume the first layer is the most time consuming, right?
Yes, it is. Yep, the first layer we put down is a 5-foot, what we call fluff layer. That waste has to be free of objects that could damage the liner system. And by permit and by regulation, we're required to put that cushion layer, if you will, down first to protect the liner system. And then basically.
Okay, I'm listening to this meeting that's happening in Coventry. And
Chris, can you mute?
I want to listen to it. So I'll call you back later. Bye.
Chris, can you mute? You can mute him on there.
He just did it himself.
Second, I don't know if there's any questions related to the construction. We're very happy to be going into the cell. We've been up on top of the landfill working for the last 3 years. Now we can get down into the cell and
Especially with the weather coming.
With the
Getting
weather
trucks up
coming.
To the top of the world up there is. would be really- No,
yeah, it's windy. It's, you know, operations are definitely problematic, that's for sure.
would you
Well,
say-
Martha?
He's still under capacity, right, for the not pushing to need the new cell right away? Or did the construction delay the capacity?
We need the cell right away.
Well, that's what I was figuring. I know you said it was a year behind, but I couldn't remember what you said last time.
Yeah, we were, you know, hoping to have the cell done a year ago. But it's, we've had to, you know, place waste over the existing footprint that's permitted just to, you know, keep the doors open basically to maximize the space we had available.
You'll have to relocate that waste?
No,
No?
no, it's all in permitted areas.
Yep.
It's just that the waste settles so much year over year over year that, you know, there was areas that the waste had settled. Eventually someday we'd go back to that area when it was advantageous to us, but we were forced to do that a little sooner, that's all.
Yeah.
We just would have preferred not to be so tight.
Yeah.
You don't want to wait till the
Mhm.
last truck to fit.
I know I was there, it was like 6 or 8 trucks at once and it was like just it's a cluster, it was tight.
Yeah, yeah, by design, we've probably only got a few weeks left of capacity, so it's very, very critical we get in the new cell. Have any decisions been made about moving the unlined portion of the landfill to a line section? And the answer to that is no decisions have been made. It's a project that's part of our long-term planning for the facility. But with phase 6, we're, you know, we have 20 to 25 years of capacity. And we would expect the permitting to be somewhere in the order of 5 to 10 years, like it was for phase 6. So probably around 2030 timeframe, 2031, 2, 3, somewhere in there, we'd start looking at permitting for the relocation of the unlined waste into the line cell. And of course, only if we got our permits would we do that. And then what and where were the 4 leachate pretreatment processes explored? It was 2 on-site and 2 off-site. So I think that question is related to the permit condition from phase 6. And we were required 2 years ago to prepare and submit a study to the agency, which we did. So on October 11th, 2019, I've got a copy I can leave with the
Actually,
town.
we emailed it to everybody who's on our list. So
Okay.
everybody got a copy of it, all 170 odd. pages
Okay,
of history,
okay.
Where you realize you should have paid
175 to
attention
be
in class in high
exact, holy
school.
cow.
And I don't know if that, if that segues into the more recent draft permit, which I also have a copy of, that came out in September, which requires a pilot study. So the treatment concept study, we're happy to talk about it, but it's 2 years old. And, we can go through that if you'd like. But the newer permit requires an actual pilot study to happen. So we can talk about that.
Actually, that'd be great.
Yeah,
You can
that would
email
be
me a
great,
copy
yeah.
tomorrow.
Okay.
when you get a chance.
All right, so again, I have a copy. If you all want a paper copy of it, the draft permit was issued on September 20th. And the agency has extended the comment period. So the comment period isn't over. It's been extended to, I think, the 24th.
24th of November.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And so, the public there's been 2 public hearings. One was held in Newport, one was held in Montpelier. The permit essentially has changed several things from the permit we had been working on. We were able to take leachate to City Newport, Montpelier, Burlington, Essex, and Barry, all with certain restrictions within the permit. So that's the permit we'd operated under since I started with the company in 1998. The newer permit restricts the disposal of leachate to one facility, Montpelier, for various reasons. Newport, of course, is the moratorium, so they were, there was no need to add that facility here in this permit. Burlington North has some mechanical issues, some tank storage issues, and they're just not ready. We never really took anything there anyway. A lot of the sites that we had permitted and still have permitted are basically emergency backup type sites, Montpelier being the primary disposal location. Similar to our site in New Hampshire, we take our leachate to Concord. We have a bunch of other facilities permitted for that facility too, but essentially they're emergency. Let's say, for example, Concord has a problem with their plant and can't take the leachate. We got to be able to take it somewhere else. So the leachate has to go to a wastewater treatment facility. There is no other option today. So this new permit only allows us to take leachate to Montpelier at 60,000 gallons per day, which is a little bit of a change. We were able to take more in the prior permit, as long as we didn't exceed the BOD limit, which was a specific condition in the permit. Sam, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the pilot study and get into some of the details on that.
Sure. So as Joe mentioned, the permit is similar in a lot of ways to the older permit. It has some different monitoring requirements, some change, some new, but it operates in a very similar way to the previous permit. It does have this condition in which we would take the next step to that report that we did in 2018, which is to take one or more of those technologies and develop a pilot system for it. So that's fairly typical. A pilot system is a smaller scale system where you work out the kinks, understand how things would operate, figure out the seasonal issues, make sure you're actually getting the results that you think you're going to get before you proceed up to a full-scale system. So we have, I believe, 4 months to submit a plan to the state of what that pilot would look like, which would spell out what are the technologies, how it will work, what are the monitoring requirements, et cetera. And then we have 1 year from when the permit is issued to actually be running the pilot system. So 4 months, and then basically in that next 8 months, it's got to be approved by the state, and then we would operate that pilot system.
Now, are you like the pioneers of this? This is all kind of new and like, is there other facilities to copy or simulate that are currently working where you're getting the information now or from, or is it something that you guys have to just figure out?
Very few. There are only a handful of systems that operate anywhere in the country, really, specifically designed to try to remove PFAS from leachate. But there are a few, and one of the technologies that looks like it will be very successful is an older technology. It's been around for a while. So there are systems that work with that technology. So we're not quite on the cutting edge, but we're pretty close. There aren't very many. There are hardly any in the Northeast at all. But I think we're trying to take what's available in the literature and the experiences of these other sites and make sure that we're putting in a system that will make sense and will work properly.
So once you have this system in place and you invent this system, so just so I have an understanding for myself, so you take the leachate, you run it through your system, and then it meets a certain requirement, then to be able to bring it to like Montpelier or to another, to a treatment plant?
Yeah, so the plan now is to develop the pilot treatment system on site and treat, back to the permit and this pilot study is really focusing on perfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS. It's the emerging contaminant that, we all have concerns with. It's a carcinogen and it's everywhere in the environment, and we need to start taking steps on removing it. And so that's really the focus of the pilot study, is to get the PFAS out of the environment, and certainly reduce it, if not eliminate it, out of the leachate. The landfill produces a lot of leachate. The wastewater plant produces a significant amount of effluent every day with PFAS in it too, but we're a contributor. And we provide, I think we're about 1% or a little bit less of the total flow, daily flow of a wastewater plant. So we have a very small overall, volume that goes into the plant daily. However, the leachate's got, it's got PFAS in it. So the focus here in this permit is to knock the PFAS down or eliminate it, and embark upon the study to see if the technology that we present and would be approved by the agency will work. Implement the pilot, do the testing, and see. So there's a bunch of reporting that's required in here along the way to demonstrate to the agency, is it working, is it not working? I suspect if it's not working, they may have us look at something else. So it's so together with the agency, I think we're trying to figure out how to get PFAS out of the leachate.
Right, because at this point, the leachate has to go somewhere.
Has to go
It
somewhere.
has to go somewhere regardless.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It's today's landfills are lined, and we're required to collect the leachate. Because we're required to collect it, it's got to go somewhere, and it's got to go to a wastewater plant.
Now, when you take the PFAS out of the leachate, what happens with that chemical? What's that? Like, that must be really bad.
Yeah.
What do you do with that?
Yeah. So I think, and I'll let Sam expand on it. I think that's one of the challenges is going to be, you're going to end up with a concentrated PFAS. So the question is, what's going to happen with that? There's a good chance it's going to come back to the landfill.
You'd hate to put that in the landfill and have it break down again, and it's like this endless battle. You want that to be contained in a separate, I would imagine, in a separate cell or environment. It's in a totally own environment.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of work, people trying to add either cement or fly ash or something that would then bind that up into a solid material, so that, to your point, we just can't loop things around forever. But if you can get it solid so that it stays in the landfill and doesn't come back out, then that's likely going to be an acceptable piece. But you got to get the
First, you
liquid
gotta
down.
get it out.
Right.
Martha, go ahead.
So I read in the pilot program that maybe it wasn't the pilot program, but are you planning on incinerating any of the PFAS?
We won't incinerate PFAS. As we try to come up with solutions for what to do with the residual, it's possible that incineration could be the solution there. The problem is that you need a very high temperature for incineration for that to work properly, which doesn't exist very commonly. So it's not going to be your average incinerator to do that. So that's one of the things that we'll look at to try to destroy the residual, but certainly not going to be anywhere in
Are
Vermont.
there any other ways other than either leaving it or burning it to attack the residual? I mean, UV really isn't gonna do much to it, so I'm kind of just thinking we're just gonna end up with a big pile of PFAS at
What does it actually look like though? Have you done enough calculation on this 60,000 or just say on a tractor trailer, how many gallons is that? 6,000, 15,000 in an average tractor? How many?
9,000.
9,000?
Mhm.
Would there be a 55-gallon drum of PFAS out of a 9,000 gallon?
That's
Do
a
you
good
know
question.
what
I
the
don't know.
ratio is?
I don't.
Like, are we looking at a quart?
Yeah, I
You
don't
know, what is
It's
it? What
all
does it
new.
look like?
It's all new.
Okay,
So the RO, which is one of the technologies, gets around to 10 to 20%. So you would take 9,000 gallons and get it down to 900 to 1,800 gallons, which is good, but it's still a lot of liquid. So then the next step is, well, how can we get the even smaller concentration or figure out a way to manage that liquid?
yeah, because that's gonna be a big problem, probably. All of a sudden you have 1,000,000 gallons of bad.
Well, it'll certainly be much smaller quantities than the leachate itself,
Right.
but there still has to be an ultimate solution for it.
How does the solidification does it seem to have legs to have, because making a solid would be certainly convenient.
I would say it's promising. I mean, it looks like that there's hope there that will work. People are still working on it, trying to understand it.
Yeah.
900 gallons solidified is still a lot on the
Yeah, it's
TPO.
still- yeah.
So the landfill will fill up quicker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot of old.
Right, if
Why
you
not?
can't go into a waste treatment facility, then all of a sudden you're gonna be having so much, you keep dumping it through, yeah.
And additional trucking, back
Yeah,
perhaps.
yeah, because they're not gonna want to keep it, they're gonna want to give it back, yeah.
What we really need to focus on is getting the, PFAS containing materials, out of industry, which I think is starting to happen. And unfortunately, we're left with carpets and couches and so forth that have it in it.
Yeah,
So with the pre-treatment facility being in Coventry, is it gonna be Casella's business practice that they're gonna continue to import into Vermont leachate? Because I think that's,
You say continue, we're not
Well,
importing into
you don't.
Coventry with
Well, no, I
leachate.
know not into Coventry, but into Vermont is what I said, no.
So the permit, let's talk about that. So the permit does allow us to bring leachate from our New Hampshire facility, but we take very little, if ever, and it's only in an emergency situation. But again, it provides flexibility in disposal if Concord doesn't allow it, just like Montpelier might not allow it. We got to take the leachate somewhere so we can take the Vermont leachate to Concord or vice versa. So it builds flexibility in. I think if you look back over the last few years, you're going to see that we took very little leachate from New Hampshire. But yes, the permit does allow that. And it also,
5 days in the last 5 years. It's very, very small.
Yeah, you're not in the business of trucking leachate all over the place. You just want it,
No.
obviously you like just dropping it off and moving on, but
right.
because it's a problem, you need to know how to figure out how to treat it. Someone has to figure out how to treat it, and the state's not doing it, right? So
Right. And as we sit here today, to my knowledge, Vermont is the only one that's for my facilities. I'm speaking just for my facilities, is having us look at a pilot program to explore treatment. That's not happening in Concord.
So just on that line of bringing leachate from out of state, so if Concord all of a sudden decides that they don't want to take PFAS contaminated leachate, Your intention is then to bring it here to process it?
So our permit requires or limits us to 60,000 gallons per day. So it would be my expectation that Montpelier will continue to serve Coventry's facility and Concord's and Bethlehem's site would have to go somewhere else.
No,
Be
I
my
meant
guess.
the treatment of it to eliminate the PFAS.
Once you get the pilot program, once the pilot's up.
Once the full facility is built, is it your intention, if New Hampshire is not gonna take that PFAS laden leachate, that you'll bring it here and process it here?
The system that we're building would only be designed to take Coventry's leachate. We're not building some big regional.
Okay, so you're
Facility.
saying that the facility here is to treat only leachate from this landfill?
We would always try to have the emergency, like we do today, where if we need an emergency to take it, but there's no intention to build some kind of big, large facility that's gonna take leachate from multiple states. It doesn't make any sense for us to even consider doing.
Well, if you can't dispose of it in New Hampshire, and you've got a facility to treat it here,
But you're talking about two different things. You're talking about just regular treatment, and then you're talking about PFAS treatment specific. So in Concord, they don't require PFAS
Today.
specific treatment today.
today.
So today, that's not.
So I'm saying tomorrow, when you decide not to take it, you've got a facility to treat it, why wouldn't you be bringing it here?
Well, the next answer is we would take it to Franklin, New Hampshire, which is where the second location is in New Hampshire, treat leachate.
Eventually,
If New Hampshire
hypothetically,
turns into Vermont.
probably every landfill is gonna have their own treatment facility. Possibly, once it's figured out on how the best ways to treat it, right?
Well, the funny question is that we think it won't be every landfill, it will be every wastewater plant. I think, because every wastewater plant in the state of Vermont and the state of New Hampshire discharges PFAS today, whether or not there's a landfill involved. So we think there'll come a day that whether there's a landfill or not, the wastewater treatment plants will have to have solutions to treat PFAS. To your point, it's probably also true that landfills will also have to have ways to manage their leachate.
Right, unless you could just pay a waste facility, just take it, because again, it's not your priority, right? It's not your business.
Well, it's not our expertise,
Right.
certainly. While we're committed and eager to get the pilot study going, it doesn't necessarily mean that the full treatment facility is going to be in Coventry.
Right.
May not be there. It may be at one of the wastewater facilities. If that's, if we can find a partner and the economics work, that might be an option.
I understand that.
Yep.
We have a question from online. Once the leachate has been treated to remove the PFAS, will leachate then be trucked to Montpelier?
If it's pre-treated at the landfill in Coventry, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So what happens if Montpelier decides to not take it? Then where does it go? I know that's a big what if, but me being where you are, I want to know what your plan B is.
Well, today we're permitted to go to Franklin, Concord, and Plattsburgh.
So we would have to ship our leachate out of state if Montpelier stopped taking it. Okay, that's perfect. Not perfect, but thank you for answering.
Go ahead, Henry.
You fellows are engineers. I have a basic question. If you put 60,000 gallons through a pre-treatment process, you've already clarified that probably 10 to 20% will be in filters and PFAS concentrated, and that should be sequestered. Am I following this correctly? The remaining 80% is still liquid, is it not? And needs to
No.
be trucked.
So if you
And
had
eventually-
60,000 gallons of leachate,
Yes,
then you would divide it into two streams.
correct.
So let's assume it's 10%. 54,000 would essentially be clean. And 6,000 would have all the PFAS in it.
Who monitors that to determine whether it's in fact clean and the technology is working? You said it doesn't exist yet, except in a couple, 3, 4 places.
So the reverse osmosis is not a new technology. That one has been around for a long time. because it's used
All sugar
elsewhere.
makers know that. I understand reverse osmosis. But it's not, the second study that the state commission did they not talk about almost electrolysis or something added to the reverse osmosis
They
and
did.
the carbon filtration.
They identified a particular technology, HTX, which was identified in the second report and asked us to look at that, which we did. Unfortunately, HTX went bankrupt 4 or 5 months ago,
Yeah,
and so they ceased to exist. Now, but you're correct. There are people working on destruction technologies where you figure out ways to actually destroy the compounds.
yeah.
But
Throughout-
those are
Yeah,
rare.
throughout the consultant's report, I remember reading adjectives like, it is speculative at this point, it is experimental, it is only bench ready. Bench ready meaning, to me, that means in the lab, but not in the real world. And to entrust a private developer who's interested in, I'm sorry, a private corporation, your motive is profit. We read it in your quarterly reports. To cut costs, I just think it's too important a societal concern that we have as a whole society to entrust it to a private corporation. I think the state needs to do this, and for this reason, I would recommend that we wait, respectfully wait, and we ask that, pre-treatment of leachate to get PFAS out of it is important. It's an important goal. We agree with that. But it should not be left to a private corporation to do that. It should be a society or a governmental operation.
Well, Henry, I think we can respectfully disagree with that. I think, this company and myself personally have spent, my hour in my career protecting the environment, and will continue to do that, and I'll do it for the rest of my career. And
I
so,
appreciate that, Joe. But
and
accidents do happen, and
accidents, of course, happen in everyday
it
life.
happened in 19 tankers worth of leachate spilled into the Amazon River in Bethlehem.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Well, it went somewhere. I don't know. It was just.
Way in the back. Chris.
So I just have a couple of questions on the pilot program. Did y'all mention what the time frame for it was, as in when it's gonna start and how long it's gonna be? If I kind of missed it, I'm sorry.
So it has to be operational within 1 year of the day of the permit. So let's assume the permit will get approved in January. Then it would have to be operational by then. And then it has to operate over that next year, and the reports are due 2 years after it starts operation.
Okay. The pilot program is there to explore ideas of how to treat it as opposed to, I guess, is it gonna like basically whittle it down to 1 or 2? Well, exploratory at this point, I guess what I don't understand is how is something that is exploring ideas right now with an operational good in a year's time frame? And that's kind of what I'm trying to understand from a real world standpoint. What is that? What are those steps that you guys are going to take to make that happen?
So I would say the 2018 report was the exploratory report.
Okay.
It narrowed it down to just a handful of technologies. The pilot is going to propose, we think, 2 technologies.
Okay.
And so you're not going to be, looking at a world of different options. You're just looking at those 2,
Yep.
and then you're proving that those 2 will work. And then you have the monitoring requirements to demonstrate that it is working, and that's all then being taken to Montpelier, where you have the ability to monitor it there as well. So there's no new discharge, there's no release to the environment. It's showing it that it works. You're having the monitoring results and proving that it works. That's the purpose of the pilot.
And the agency needs to approve that as well.
Understood. Okay.
So there's essentially gonna be 2 different treatments going on in this
For the next
program
year.
or in that year.
We think so. We're still working out the final report that has to be submitted in that 4-month period, but we think that there'll be 2 treatment options linked together with the ability to kind of demonstrate what's going on in those 2
I
options.
guess at the end of the study, what's gonna happen is the 6,000 gallons that's left, is that worse than having it all in the 60,000 gallons? Until you figure out what to do with the 6,000 gallons out of the 60,000 gallons, I think that's still a pretty big problem, right?
It won't be worse. We have to manage that 6,000 gallons. So it's got to be managed either by putting in the landfill or ensuring that it's properly managed, destroyed. So one way or the other, it has to be properly managed.
And hopefully the technologies continue to evolve and maybe that's not as big of a deal today. It's a question. But I think the pilot study is going to hopefully test out many things, that being one. You know, what is
So
it?
what really gets me here is the word hopefully, which, so I'm not sure exactly like where
Jay,
the pilot
Jay.
program is going to go. Sorry, I mean, that's kind of more to a follow-up here. Because I've been in several programs where we do end up competing ideas, and at the end of it, it turns out that neither of them are as effective as we once thought. So what's the contingency in case that does happen?
We're very confident that the technology will remove PFAS. We know it because the reverse osmosis has removed PFAS. It segregates it, and so you got to manage that. So the pilot will show how many gallons do we have to manage? How small a liquid can we get it?
So the technology has been proven, so to speak. Right now, it's more of a testing phase of how well it's doing. Is that kind of where what I'm trying to get to?
Well, and I would also,
Yeah.
I would also say that running a pilot program is not unusual. Almost all major wastewater facilities
Understood.
would run a
Understood.
very similar kind of program.
The only downside for it is that when it doesn't end up kind of panning out the way we initially thought it would, contingencies in place might help out, or I don't know, because my issue with that would be if we end up leaving it as is, we just take the I guess the best of two evils, so to speak, and not really end up getting what we truly want, which I think is what the concern is.
Yeah, you're certainly not wrong. And what we have as a guide is the draft permit.
Understood. But permits only take us so far, the real world kind of,
All right.
permits will say, hey, here's the standards based on the current sign.
Right.
Science changes tomorrow and suddenly people don't change.
Right.
We can't change our dominance, so to speak.
Right, and you're absolutely right, and there's permits and rules in place now where, we have opted to spend additional money and add levels of protection to the environment that's not required by the
Oh,
permit, so,
absolutely.
that's the type of company that, that we are.
Right. Now, I think with faith in the private sector to a certain extent, because I do believe a lot of innovation does come out from when people work together to get things, moving, even if there's a profit motive in the background.
There certainly needs to be more of that.
I agree, their incentives are a good thing, but just on the other side of it, the public concern too is quite valid here.
Yep.
And I'm sure you guys are aware of it.
Yep.
So I think it really needs to be avoided using terminology such as treatment and clean, because none of these things will be either. You're partially treating this. The wastewater treatment plant partially treats the waste that goes through there. Because it meets allowable amounts of concentrations that the state allows, does not mean it's not polluting those areas. They're just saying, we're just going to pollute it a little bit at a time. Okay, this doesn't disappear when it goes into the water. It does. It goes into the water, the soil in the water. It goes into the animals in the water. It goes into the vegetation surrounding the water. This doesn't disappear. It goes into the atmosphere. The reason that we have slight concentrations of this in all the land in all of this country, they found that out when they started testing down in Bennington, because they had to monitor because they're getting levels in every person's backyard, hundreds of miles away, because it goes into the air, it's transpired from this lake into the air, and it's distributed all over. So the landfill you have here in Coventry, you guys graciously invited them to come and dump this stuff here, but the waste that's coming out of this landfill is being dumped all over the state in the form of leachate. When you're dumping this into the lake here at Newport or the other facilities that's going on, it's not the way that this should be done. You've got in part of your plan, you've got a zero sum treatment of some sort, where if you take this bad stuff out, you've contained it, and you're going to dispose of some of the way, why don't you dump the residual back into the landfill? It's actually shown that it assists the landfill in decomposing that matter. If it's that clean, just dump it back in the landfill, pump it back in. You know that technology is there. It's being used in landfills all over the country. Anyways, I just, just saying that treatment is enough, that it's magically gone, that's not the truth. There's some residual that comes through. It's not clean, it's not clear, but just please don't use terminology such as that. That makes people think that this is, pure water that you're dumping back into the river.
Thank you.
I have one question on the timeline, the 4 months and then 8 months, is that enough time to build and have it up and running?
We believe so. We're gonna have to hustle, but that should be enough time to get a small scale system in. There are permits that have to be obtained even beyond this permit. And so, that will be part of the time frame that has to be there. Those permits have to be gotten in a timely manner and approved in a timely manner. Some of that will be not in our full control, but assuming that's all timely, we believe it'll be enough time.
And we're working on it now.
Right.
The permit's not finalized.
And Martha.
So can you tell me what the 2 treatments are that you're leaning towards that will be in the pilot program?
So I'll tell us what we're thinking. It's
Yeah,
not final.
obviously it's not set in stone.
So we're looking at the reverse osmosis and we're looking at a technology called foam fractionation, both of which are separation technologies.
Sorry, could you repeat that second one, please?
Foam fractionation, which is a way to try to remove PFAS by relying on its ability to foam it.
Yep.
Because it wants to do that.
Gotcha.
And can you tell us where your selection site will be?
For the
For the
pilot,
pilot?
it'll be at the landfill. The leachate will go back to Montpelier after being treated.
Well, I appreciate your candidness. This is the first time in all the public hearings that we've learned that transparently that you're planning for the pilot on site at the landfill.
I will say we've continued to talk with Montpelier. And so if we're able to come to some consensus with Montpelier, there could be another option, but today, that's the plan.
I would imagine that one of the wastewater treatment plants may be not ideal for the pilot because that may need to be modified in a certain way. And, they'd have to have containers to be able to take all this and treat it and hold it and such.
Well, and as Joe mentioned earlier, the flow of leachate is less than 1% of the total flow at the wastewater plant.
Yes,
So there's a lot more.
The leachate is 50 to 100 times the density, or the
Concentration.
pollution density of regular wastewater, municipal wastewater.
Yep,
So,
not disagreeing, but if you're,
I mean,
if you're treating though, it's a lot, still a lot of
multiplied
liquid.
by-
So how many gallons of leachate right now are you getting off the waste facility in Newport a day now?
I think it depends on how much it's raining, and when we go in the new cell, it's gonna be a lot more within a day.
It's just big.
It's big, yeah. So we're between, say, 40 and 70,000 gallons per day. When it freezes up and gets cold through the winter, it's less, and then in the spring it's more, it rains. We have our new cell, it could be upwards of 100,000 gallons a day.
And when you expand and open the new cells in the expanded portion, how many thousand gallons per day?
That's what he just-
will that be?
Could be
Because
up to-
even
I think we just
closed
did.
landfills, we understand produce leachate.
That's what he just,
Yeah,
he just said, right now it's between 40, 60,000, and he could expect with the new one, you could potentially see 100,000.
All depends on the rain. and
If there was a
stuff.
roof over and there was no rain, then it would be a lot.
It's a bigger catch basin.
We'd be in Arizona.
Okay, we're gonna have like 2 or 3 more questions. We're gonna wrap this up. Go ahead, Mark.
I have one more question. So, there's a national PFAS coalition, and their data shows currently that there's over thousands of PFAS chemicals. So will the treatments, if there is something that is passed nationally, there's only, Vermont is very unique, we only require 5, you to filter 5 out. But if the federal legislation goes through anytime in the next 3 to 4 years, it will require at least 20. So will there be room for pre-treatment to add on, and like if you need to add on the UV? Or, you see what I'm saying? Like, is there room to play with the pilot program to, increase its, I don't even know what the word would be.
Well, it's an ongoing science. I think as technology evolves and treatment ideas are come up, you'll do it to the best that can be done, right? I would imagine.
There certainly could be options to add different things. I guess I would also say that none of the technologies are designed only to treat the 5 compounds. Ideally, you're getting them all. There's some differences between short chain and longer chain. And those are, you got to try to get both groups, but it's not as if the system's only designed to get a certain set of compounds and not get the other compounds. But
That answered my question. Thank you.
And there's actually a list, Mark, of 26 in the permit.
Oh, it's
The
26.
5 you're referring to is for the drinking water standard in the state.
I did not make it through that whole 170, whatever, I'm not gonna lie.
Go ahead.
Tapped out.
I just, I know this is going to be wrapped up, but to me, and I currently don't live in the watershed. I have 3 sons and 7 grandchildren who do in the watershed nearby. I used to dump my trash in Old Charlie Neighbors Pit, so I'm very well acquainted with this area. And to me, Magog is unique in a couple, 3 ways. It has, Lake Magog is the drinking water reservoir for our neighbors, 175,000. We have to be cautious and take every precaution. If this scoping study said you evaluate 2 other off-site options, I think, can we see that you evaluated those so that they're not in an area where Canadians or anybody drinks the water coming downstream from that pilot project? It's the wrong place, in my view.
Henry,
Also,
Lake Magog is
Also, we're
important,
learning.
but Lake Champlain is important, and the Winooski River is important, and the Connecticut River is important. They're no less important. All those water bodies need to be protected. So we need to protect Lake Magog, but we're not going to do it at the expense of any other water body. They all need to be equally protected.
Again, I guess, so I'm gonna add my thought to this is, and it's kind of going, it's not standing up for them, for lack of a better word, is they're already pumping the leachate out in the tanks that are up at the landfill. In my eyes, with a pre-treatment, and I know treatment may not be, but you're treating it may not be treating it fully, but is that they're gonna, before it gets taken out of those tanks and put on a truck to go to a wastewater plant, it's gonna go through this treatment facility and then go onto the trucks and go into the plant. So I guess me from a business standpoint, but also from, if something happened, you're talking about leachate getting into the environment, we had a truck here roll over. If you treat it on site prior to it getting put onto the trucks, you're taking that, lack of better words, hazardous out of there before it gets off site and rolling down the road. I guess I understand where you're coming from, and this is my personal opinion and how I've looked at all this is I would personally rather see it be treated on site to get rid of, to remove the PFAS prior to it even getting into another area that it could contaminate for some reason.
So in the report, and what A&R or DEC are looking at as well is disposal in the Black River. So if you're concerned about this going elsewhere, it's The plan is that it's gonna be right in your backyard.
Right, but if it's being, how would it be?
It's still, there's 200 chemicals that are contained in leachate. If you looked at the report from, that they do for every, several times.
Other
a
than
year on
PFAS,
leachate,
other than the
it's
PFAS.
hundreds, and they're carcinogenic, and they're, they're nasty. The nastiest things that we make go into that landfill, come out in liquid form. So to say that it's gonna be sufficient.
I'm not saying it's gonna be sufficient.
But think of it, tens of millions of gallons, hundreds of millions over the course of 10 years, being dumped into the Black River and into Minnesota.
But I don't,
Just
where,
painting
Yeah,
that picture for you.
that's
where-
not happening.
I was gonna say,
So-
where's it being dumped into the
so-
Black River, but I'm not gonna get.
Yeah,
into
so,
that.
so sometimes things get said and it really confuses people. That is not happening. Okay, the leachate goes to the Montpelier
Joe,
wastewater.
you
plant.
know that DEC, I've got the names right here of the people who are evaluating that right now.
The
So
leachate, the
don't
landfill
blame-
leachate that we're collecting is not going into the Black River. You're wrong.
I'm telling you, as part of their
Okay.
permit, it's being investigated. They've got an engineer working on it. So on your behalf, even though you guys aren't putting them to the task, that if we need to, can we dump this in the Black River? That is what they're looking at. If they deny it, I want to hear it tonight.
The only way
that once
anything
you
would ever
treat
go
that
to the
leachate,
Black
that you're
River
not
is if
gonna
it's
dump it in the Black
completely
River.
treated and meets a drinking water standard. That's not what we're talking about.
I'm saying, you're gonna tell me tonight that if you're gonna put a plant up here, that you're not gonna dump it into the Black River.
You're saying that the leachate is going into the Black River.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
That's what you
You're
said.
misinterpreting what I'm saying. I'm saying if the plant is developed here, there's a schedule for that to go into the Black River. A&R is looking at it, DEC is looking at it, your engineers are consulting with them. I can happily go down the names right now in front of you, Dad.
So if the leachate gets treated and it meets a standard that is allowed to go to the Black River, then if they're looking at it, great.
Yeah, I know, that's.
But it's not
that's what you
leachate.
guys-
It wouldn't be
that's what you
leachate at
guys
that
think.
point.
You
It would
think-
be
you
drinking water.
You know that it's gonna contain still hundreds of chemicals, but it doesn't mean. as
If
long
it's
as it meets
containing
their
hundreds of
criteria.
chemicals, that wouldn't be allowed.
As long as it meets their criteria, and they have pitiful criteria. You know, it hasn't been revised in 40 years. Don't,
No.
we can get into a real good debate about this.
Okay.
Before we let Costello go, I want to say thank you guys for the
Yeah.
fall festival. I really appreciate it. Joe, you sent the guys and they put everything together, like always. I appreciate it bigly.
Yeah, no problem. Glad we could help. Anytime.
Well, thanks very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for informing us. I mean, this is obviously it's a touchy topic.
Absolutely.
Nobody really wants it, but we all want it to be treated and managed correctly. And it's a learning curve for everyone.
Well, we certainly want to come in and anytime you guys need us, we're here to talk about any of this.
Thank
stuff.
you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
know my drinking water's in that Black River too. Just kidding.
Thank you.
Yes. Look, he's been here long enough, he puts his chairs away. Joe, you've been here long enough to put your chairs away.
That's okay.
You're good, Joe.
There's a meteor coming in tomorrow morning, they'll be using it right away.
Because that was the way I was brought up. Okay, so moving on, consideration of proposal for roof replacement on the Elijah Cleveland Meeting House, formerly Coventry Congressional Church. So it looks like Ned, we've got one.
We have one bid from Vermont Construction. It has several provisos in there. I would recommend that we
Can we answer that question before? Thank you, David.
That's how rumors get started.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yes, it is.
No, it is not.
It is not gonna be discharged in Black River.
So the proposal we have here is from Vermont Construction Company out of Burlington. Looks like the bid for the roof is on here, and it has some safeguards built in if they find, rotted plywood and any additional things. They have it broken down, so it doesn't look like there'd be any hidden costs or fees that would be alarming to the town and if they come up with some underlining conditions of rotted plywood or 2 layers or lead flashing needed for the chimney, or they pretty much nailed it.
They've gotten everything and every little last nut or bolt. They've also added the 2 layers of snow guards.
David Gallup and David Barlow, did you see this and go over it?
Yes, the same one we had last meeting.
Oh, it is.
Yes, it is.
Was there?
Yeah.
You hear me?
Yeah. So was there, we discussed last meeting about.
Same one from the last meeting?
Yes, it is, David. Can you hear us, David? Yeah, let him come back.
Yeah, he dropped out.
Yep. We had discussed at the last meeting about getting them to tarp it. Was that reached out to them to ask?
That would not have been appropriate until they were under some.
So a couple of things on this bid is it doesn't include the lower side entrance roof. It doesn't include steeple work, which we don't need, and eave returns. So I believe there is a couple eave returns on the front of the building that where it comes around the corner, there is a couple eave returns there that should be done. And I believe there's also that lower overhang roof that goes up to the steeple, that I don't think they're including that. Then it also does say here, does not include Davis-Bacon or other wage rates. Who's Davis-Bacon?
Oh, it's a federal requirement that they have to meet certain guidelines for wages.
Okay.
Thankfully, no federal dollars involved.
How much is available currently for this project?
Can you admit, David?
So in buildings and maintenance, we have sufficient funds for this project.
Would you like me to reach out to them and get the returns and the overhangs of the steeple and the other minor rules?
Yeah, and ask them if we're, tell them we would need it like a,
And then like a.
David, wouldn't you think it's like a 20, it's like a 20 by however long it is up each side of that roof, must be 30 or 40 feet, like a 800 square foot parcel of the roof to be tarped for winter so it doesn't leak?
I guess that's probably about right. I never figured the square footage, but it's definitely on the east side.
Northeast side,
Yeah.
closer to the front of the building.
That appears to be the case. Now, keeping in mind, sometimes water can travel considerable distances before it appears, but that it's coming in somewhere up there.
Okay. I will-
So reach out to them then and let's.
I will also reach out to Burke.
I think we're getting close, but I'd really be nice to have one more bid,
Yeah, and the guy in Albany.
seeing as how they're not gonna do it this year
Yeah.
anyways, but.
Yeah, and if you get the tarping separate, I thought that's what we were supposed to get.
Yeah.
So we could get that taken care of, but. David Gallup, can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we gonna ask voters for more money?
So
We
what,
probably should, no, yeah.
We have a grant.
We have a grant for 50,000 and we have hundreds of thousands in the other
We're
reserve
fine.
funds.
so that's in the building and maintenance fund, so yeah.
So we're good.
David,
Just told me that to work with.
All right, so should we,
Huh?
You told me it was building and maintenance, I didn't catch that.
so for number 5, we're gonna table that till
Table to next, yeah,
meeting.
and I will have hopefully more bids and more info.
Okay, moving on, NEK Broadband Communications Union District Annual Report to Members and Towns. That is Mr. Carlo.
Used to be Mr. Marquette. Okay. Yeah, they handily sent this annual report out, then told us about it later. So it's a basic rundown of what's happened with NEK Broadband. I think a couple points to bring out. Perhaps the biggest one is they've already started building. They're in Concord and Lunenburg running fiber and getting ready to light up houses. So it's underway. And they're using what they call CARES Act money or COVID money to do that primarily. They have a business plan. They're developing that into an executable project plan. They've identified some big sources of funding, and I think this passage of this latest infrastructure bill probably brought a sigh of relief that there's even more money coming. So it looks like this is really going to happen, since it already is really happening. And just to run down for those of you not familiar with it, NEK Broadband is going basically everywhere the power company goes, with the exception of places that are already served by providers that meet the minimum standard, or capability, which at this point I believe is 100 megabits symmetric service, so 100 up, 100 down. So for example, in Coventry, I live up on Maple Ridge. Maple Ridge has cable from Comcast. They are not planning to come to Maple Ridge. But other locations in Coventry that are considered unserved or underserved are on the plan. Coventry's relatively soon in their implementation. Anything at now is a guess, but somewhere in the next 18 months to 3 years, probably be likely if things continue at the current speed. You may see, if you're watching job advertisements, NEK Broadband is actively advertising to fill several of their positions and has filled several. One of the major implementation problems they face is the labor force to do the fiber optic cable installation. But they're taking steps to try to work through that. So to sum up, they've got money, they're building, they've built quite an organization, they're continuing to do that. So I think this is something quite useful for the town. One more item that I'm tasked to work for them that I need to get on is they're looking for places where they can put their infrastructure, typically places that have backup power, and the possibility of hosting a small communications structure. And Coventry does have potential for a couple of those spots, although I don't know that they're located where they would interest NEK CUD. But I need to come talk to you guys, I would think, next meeting about the possibilities, just so I get it in your head to think about it. The building you sit on has backup power, the school does, and I believe the Route 14 garage as well. I'll throw that over to David Gallup for a confirm or deny.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
Yeah, so there's some possibility that we could be helpful in this. They would more than likely reimburse any costs involved. But at this point, they're just looking to identify infrastructure that might be useful. So with that, I'll turn it over to questions or comments.
I got a couple for you, David. First one, when it does come to Coventry, do we get a say as to, or I guess, how do we decide where they're gonna go and lay the fiber optic lines? Because I do know that there are some areas where there's a mix of services where Comcast doesn't quite get to it, and like you're serviced by places like New England Wireless or VTel. how do you get to those, I mean, who makes the decision of where it gets laid, where the fiber optic gets laid versus not? Is it us or is it them?
Them. Did you hear that, David?
Not really. I think I got the
Yeah.
gist. I mean, who's asking the question? I can't tell who's speaking.
The
It's
ultimate,
pretty,
the ultimate question is who makes the decision where that fiber runs? Is it us or the CUD? It's the CUD, right?
It is the CUD, but not without our input. So
that's kind of what I was getting at.
it would be useful to, and we're kind of in the zone right now where they don't want the maps made public quite yet, but we're almost to the point where we can basically do drive arounds and try and verify or confirm or deny.
Basically survey the people. Yeah, because you know, where I'm at, I know Comcast gets to a certain spot, but then New England Wireless kind of takes over and then they don't service my area only because I got too many trees in the way. Yeah, I'm just using my LTE right now. So I know there's a few folks who are in that same situation further out from, you know, the village and other areas. So if we have any input that we can provide it, I think it'd be valuable for us to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, that was it, Dave. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's part of what we need. It's part of on the to-do list. And it's, of course, when they originally did, they got information from the providers themselves, and lo and behold, that wasn't entirely accurate, not surprising. So yeah, there's definitely an upcoming effort to confirm or deny. You can kind of think your way through that's going to be really hard to do with any definite precision if people don't really want to play, but we can make sure we don't have any huge gaps. And another critical thing that I talked about earlier is they can only go where the power lines go. And that's the plan. So people that are off grid, you're off grid, sorry.
We do have power lines and phone lines coming. The interesting thing is Consolidated provides us our phone line, but they don't do internet. Go figure.
You're too far out from the box.
I guess so. Yeah.
House road the same way.
Yeah.
Terrible,
Well,
myself.
thank you for that update, David.
So trying to figure it out, right?
You're up.
Yeah, I said just stick around for something else here. Just paint a target on me. So
We do
just
that.
don't do it with leachate. So
Yeah.
treasurer's report for October. Big expense this month, or that shows up, was for, I believe it was the second coat of pavement on Coventry Station Road. That came out of the Road Infrastructure and Equipment Fund. So that was the big expense. Other expenses were just the usual stuff. And if you have the report, which everybody who got the email gets, you can scroll through it. And if you get to the reconciliation report, the general fund that comes from Nemrick, you can get a real good idea what we're spending our money on because it's listed in there by check. The other thing of interest here, and it's completely expected, is our revenues are way up in October. Huh. That's tax funds coming in. And we, of course, got a whole bunch more in November that'll show up, and then we'll have a huge expense called writing that check to the school that empties out all that good tax money that came in. So I would think by the time December's report rolls around, we'll be back to a general fund account that's got a more normal balance of around 1.2 million-ish, give or take. I am showing for the first time here some expenses from the cemetery fund. That's the work that was done up at Coventry Four Corners Cemetery, I call it. People call it different things, but up at the intersection of Airport Road and Coventry Station Road. We paid for that out of the cemetery fund itself. I haven't actually moved that money yet, but I do have, I think, the ability to do that. So we're about to test that. Other than that, concludes my report, pending your questions. Over.
That was the,
Thank you.
the stone. That thing we voted on a few months ago. Yes, what they did at the cemetery. That was the, that they came, the cemetery came to us to
Yes, $9,200 and some odd dollars, yes.
9,950.
It was to clean the stones up, right? Or something.
It was to fix, to actually replace several stones that were completely destroyed basically over time. And re-straighten up a whole bunch more was the major work.
Okay, thank you, David. Okay, other business. Planning Commission requests to replace computer and other needs.
Yeah, the computer is almost on its last leg, so we're just wondering if the town would buy us a new computer for taking minutes.
Okay, so did you want to look at the computers?
I had emailed Steph to see if I could look at it. Not that I'm saying we can't,
Okay,
I think Ned brought, it should be put into this budget this year, although we could take it out. I don't know, David, is there funds somewhere that we could purchase a new laptop? Before,
I'd have to look. Off the top of my head, I can't answer the question. As your on the site IT guy, though, I want to get my hands on that computer. Where is it? Can I have it?
the laptop?
Yep.
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same thing to check on it. So Steph, I think probably has it.
yes, the first I know.
She's on the phone.
She's on, she's unmuted. Go ahead.
Actually, this is Dan. I was able to join late. So yeah, the computer, she does have it. And the problem is the keys don't always work on it. So typing out minutes or the agenda. And she also uses this computer for the select board minutes as well. And then also Zoom doesn't always function correctly on it. And I believe this computer back when Amanda was there was slated to be replaced and then never happened. So that, I guess that's why we're bringing this back up again.
Yeah, so let's get that in here so I can take a look, maybe if Phil, if I can't get it fixed, but that's from the same family of computers that we've got. I have one that I bought in 2017. So from a life cycle perspective, yeah, they're getting a little bit aged, coming up on 5 years, but the other ones are still functioning correctly. So if we can get it in to take a look at it, that would be good.
Could be some.
Sure. When would be a good time for you to look at it?
Can you drop it off? Or I'm here on Fridays from 1 to 4, but I'm going to need probably to look at it at home with the right tools.
That's fine. We'll bring it to you for Friday.
And how much roughly is a new computer like that?
Anywhere from $7,000 to $2,000, depending on what you want.
Yeah, we spent about just under 1,000 for those.
The ones I've been getting for clients is somewhere, I'm at about 1,200.
So should we approve after Dave's review of this computer? Should we approve if needed up to a certain amount of money for this computer? So Dave or you have the ability to get one if we need one, and if you would know where the money would come out of, Dave, when you look at the budget, if we have it in the budget to get it this season.
You can make it contingent on finding the money, sure.
Okay. So I'll make the motion to give Dave Barlow the okay to purchase the planning commission a new computer up at 15.
So move.
$1,500 to find the money if the other one doesn't work. All those in favor? Aye.
Hey, Dan, can you send, or I sent it to Steph. Can you send me the service tag on that?
Yes, I can. I'll do that right now.
Hang up on the call.
Is that just the tag on the back, Phil?
Yeah, it's gonna be underneath and it'll say service tag.
Express service code. That's probably what you want, huh?
There should be another one that's service tag.
Yeah, it's all in the same thing.
Yep.
Here it comes.
Okay. Ned, you got somebody in the waiting room.
So that's all, so that's all we had under other business.
Other business, that's it.
I was gonna bring something up. David, I see our lines got painted.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed. Looked good when it first was done. Now I see they've faded terrible. I tried to get a hold of Trevor today, but.
Did he do all of Willowbrook Road? Because I came down and.
Yeah, he did. Been down there by Pikes for some reason over the weekend. A lot of it just disappeared.
Okay.
It looked good on the station road coming in, but there's a few spots where it looked like it's either covered with dirt or faded, and I'm assuming that it washed away or faded.
Makes a big difference on a station, don't it? That road's only 22 feet wide, but with those lines, it just seems to make it so much better.
I found the road really narrow, but now with the line, I met some cars on my way in this evening in the dark, and it was really helpful, way better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it would definitely gonna save, this is a couple bad spots on that road, and that'll definitely save an accident or two just over this winter.
Yeah, I drive by there every day. My wife never commented. Painting, fantastic. Love it.
Yep.
So
will you reach out to Trevor and see if possibly he'll be able to touch up any of those faded spots, and then he'll get us a bill?
I would doubt he's gonna be able to touch them up, do anything now, Scott, with the weather, but I was just curious if he had a answer for me, a thought on why it was faded so quickly, but.
Or maybe we could get him to just, touch it up in the spring.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Something else, the light poles down in the park.
Did we get the grant?
Did we get anything?
Dave Gallup emailed me some stuff, and I was gonna add it to the agenda for next meeting, so that we
Okay.
have more,
We can discuss
we
that.
have dollars and cents, and whether V-Trans would be even remotely interested in us paying part, and they're paying for the other part.
I had a thought to think about before. That light makes a big difference. But I think I could do maybe two, one in each corner on the
Yeah.
14, and leave that lamp pole beside there, and I think it would light it up pretty well.
Yeah,
I couldn't hear you, Phil. What?
I think I ran into you and we discussed that with, two on each corner of that, park and ride, or whatever we wanna call it, on the Route 5 side, and have that one that's on the telephone pole stay there. I think that would cover it pretty good. But we'll discuss, Ned's gonna put it as an agenda item next meeting.
You'll get the name of the poles,
I'll
we'll
get
try to
the poles.
research the price. And
exactly.
But I will say that light there now that
It
they
looks nice.
replaced it is big difference.
And Martha had one other business.
So, touching base off of the skeleton budget, has, all the officers, boards and committees been notified that they should be given a projected skeletal submission to put into the framework?
They are going to be, we've reached
You
out.
sent one out just as a warning. A couple of weeks ago. right?
Weeks ago, and we'll be sending them out to the committees that are standing. We've sent them out to not executive, the social service agencies to get their information together, and have their information put together. And
Oh, for appropriation?
yeah, for the appropriation, along with the various other department heads of the officers of the town.
Well, I was just thinking, the planning commission, Amanda usually has it all done, and then we usually, by now, we've already seen the draft, and we bring it to the table and have discussions about where we could plug in. So that's just where I was going, just wanted to make sure we're ahead of the game.
We are 90% of the way there already.
Okay, so we're now seeing any other business. Number 9, anticipated executive session. With this out. The appointment of employer evaluation of a public officer or employee provided that the public body shall make a final decision or appoint a public officer or employee in an open meeting and shall explain the reasons for its final decision during an open meeting personnel. So is it one VSA?
3133.
Three.
And then you just state who you're bringing into executive
So,
session.
I'd like to bring in, just the select board at this time, and I might call in a couple other people.
David, do you have your cell phone? Does it work?
Yeah.
That might be the easier way to do it. We'll just go upstairs. You guys can sit here. Yeah. Before you, what's your address?
5403 Airport Road. You want the van or the?
So coming out of executive session, no decisions have been. Nothing's been. How do you say, no decisions?
No decisions made, no action taken.
Yep.
That's good. No action taken.
No, yeah, no decisions made, no action taken.
From both.
So the next, yeah, well,
It was only
we were
one.
only in one, but
Okay.
we didn't need both of them. so-
We're gonna scratch 10
Okay. It is out.
and we're gonna approve the minutes.
So on the minutes, going back to executive session. So in the minutes, it should say what time you enter into executive session, what time you exit, and who entered in. So like the executive session you just went into, you entered in at 7:25, and it was the three of you, 3 board members, and then at 7:44, David Barlow entered, and then you all exited at 8:06 with no action taken. That's what should be reflected in the minutes.
Okay,
So
I got that.
Okay.
For this one.
And I will check the other.
For the
videos.
last one,
you wanna table these until next meeting?
yeah, because you can go back to recording and see what.
Yeah, I'll check the recording.
On here,
That's one nice thing about that.
did you hang up the plaque,
Yep. The
Brad?
Brad Maxwell was, it's got a place of honor next to, by itself.
Awesome.
It just needs a little bit better Velcro to hold them to the wall for the kids, and whatnot.
Before you adjourn, I just want to tell you did a banging job tonight as chair.
Thanks,
Definitely
thank you.
has the potential.
We try. I mean, it's nice to have those people come, nice to hear what they have to say. I think a couple things is that one guy who left, I think his name's Jay.
Yeah.
Left a little heated. Listen, the state requires to do certain things. These guys are doing them, they're going above and beyond is what I can see. And yeah, it may be,
Well, that's the first time that's ever been admitted in 3 years about where that pre-treatment facility was gonna go. And they've been point blank asked, the state's been point blank asked. And it's been not disclosed. So the fact that Joe came here and disclosed that like a champ was awesome.
okay, we're gonna adjourn.
Sure, we can keep.
Yeah, meeting adjourned. Yeah, like I think,